Hi, guys. Welcome to Am Yisrael Thrive. I'm Shayna.
And this is where thriving is our resistance. And I'm Jen Hayes. And it's so glad to have you back for our new week ahead.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We've got a phenomenal show. Today, we have on radicalization specialist and clinical psychologist, Miri Bar Halpern. And we're going to be discussing today everything from Kurds and being persecuted from ISIS to Iran and what's also happening in the Jewish community, of course.
Exactly.
So Jen, share with me, how's your week going so far?
So as we always like to start off, I'll start off with some positives, our roses of the week. One positive, I joined part as a table exhibitor at the Massachusetts Teachers Association Union Winter Skills Conference. I got to be with some other former and current educators who are part of the Massachusetts Educators Against Antisemitism. And we had a table in which we were able to have tons of resources on books about the Jewish experience, but not only the Jewish experience, but also Jews of color, Jews in different parts of the world outside of the United States and Israel. And we were able to share all of this information with other educators. So that was really impactful. And we were able to inform, other educators about the harm that's being done to our Jewish educators and students. So I thought that was a really amazing moment. And I got to meet some incredible people that I hope we will be able to bring on in future shows. So that was a big positive. And personally, as everyone knows, I'm a huge Harry Styles fan. He did release music. So this kind of leads into my thorn. I am excited that music is being released. His whole platform is about treat people with kindness. And I am advocating for Jews to be included into that category of people and not to be dehumanized. Unfortunately, he is supporting this organization called Choose Love, which, again, in the past has done some incredible charity work, especially around Ukraine when Russia invaded in 2022. But my issue and concern is the framing around Gaza. This organization has been perpetuating these narratives of blood libel and genocide libel. Again, helping the Palestinian people who are under the tyranny of Hamas is not anti-Semitic. There is nothing wrong with that. It's the framing and the narrative and the words and the language that is being used to foster more Jewish hate around the world. And it is upsetting that Harry has continued to work with this organization. However, I will not be pushed out. And there have been so many Israeli fans and other Jewish fans who have messaged me personally and have said to me, thank you so much for bringing this to his attention or to other people's attention. Please keep speaking out for us, please. And I'm not going to stand down. So
good.
To end on a more positive note, he is performing at Madison Square Garden on the 3rd anniversary of October 7th. And I am making it a mission to be there that day. I will get tickets.
Do you think that it was purposeful that he purposely, is it going to be like a show for to commemorate October 7th?
I don't know. I don't know if he'll even say anything. I would be happy with just even a subtle pin, or if he doesn't even want to do the hostage pin, Robert Kraft has an organization that has the blue square pin to stand up against hate. I will take that. But I want to be there, and I want to make it as a memorial to those that weren't able to continue dancing on October 7th. We're going to continue that day.
That's a great way to look at it, I have to say. And I love the fact that you're taking something that could potentially be upsetting, i.e. one of your favorite musicians potentially not supporting you, and you're choosing to own that and say, you know what, no, I still am a Harry Styles fan. I'm still going to go to his concerts, and I am going to assign my own personal values, and I'm going to assign my own personal meaning to this, and it's a positive meaning. And I really commend you, Jen. And I've seen your posts about Harry Styles, and my heart is broken for you, to be quite frank. And I think that this shows the immense responsibilities that celebrities have to really living those values if they're going to say they're for kindness, and then a certain portion of your fandom is speaking up and saying, hey, we're not being treated so kindly, can you please say something? And then silence.
Exactly. And I am going to make it my mission to highlight the increasing level of Jewish hate that is bubbling in the fandom itself. I'm sure you've seen my post calling out comments that I have personally been receiving. And I think this is what we need to be doing, is calling out this hate. So that is my kind of rose thorn of the week. And lastly, just this is breaking news, but Hamas has given a lead to the IDF on the body whereabouts of Ron.
Really? Tell me more. I didn't see this.
Yeah, so they are actively searching for his body right now. Again, nothing has been found, retrieved, anything of that. But I feel like this is a significant move in the right direction.
Have they indicated what part of Gaza?
I'm not sure exactly where in Gaza. I just saw it. I'll look it up on my Instagram. I know I put it up on my stories. That hopefully this will end soon.
I can only pray.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I remember, so one of the followers that I started following early on, Lilach Logan, I don't know if you know who she is, but
yes,
for anyone who doesn't, she's an amazing African-American Israeli who was born in Israel. She lives in Dimona Peace Village in the south of Israel, and she's the descendants of African-Americans who came from America and set up their own peace village.
Wow.
And ultimately became, Jewish, and some of them were already Jewish. And she served alongside Rand. She was a friend of Rand's, actually. And that's what I remember Rand Gavili early on, was her continuously and tirelessly advocating for her friend. And so this entire time when I've thought of Rand in Gaza, I always think of her, and I can't even imagine what kind of pain his friends, his family are going through right now. And so our hearts go out to them. Yes. Absolutely.
Exactly. Sheena, how was your week?
Thank you so much for asking. It's actually been really good. So I am going to start first on my thorn, so I can end on something positive. I apologize to the audience for having to cancel last week. That was 100% my fault, because I have been having some weird illness issues. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but I am seeking medical care. So that was my thorn. For like 5 days, I was laid up in bed just from, some crazy symptoms that I was feeling. The doctors have technically diagnosed it as like a vasovagal type syndrome. So hopefully we can get that taken care of. But but my rose of this week is I was hired to work on the Dori Ben-Ami campaign as an operational lead. So that's been, thank you. Yeah. And Dori's been a guest here, of course. Yes. And he and I have had many conversations in private about, values, what we want for the world. And so I'm super excited. And I finally feel, because you and I have talked about this a lot before, how we felt pushed out of the Democratic Party. And finally, I feel like he's a candidate that, instead of pushing me out, I feel welcomed in as a Jew. And so that's something that has gotten me really excited. And I'm also talking to another congressional candidate to potentially come on our show. So those are two really great things that we have for our audience.
Exactly. We do want to say to the audience, before we do introduce our guest and we have our amazing interview, we will be having a little memorial for those that have lost their lives in Iran and in Syria. So if you would like to take a moment with us later in the show to light a candle and to say any of what you're feeling, we will have space for that towards the end of the show. So we do want to acknowledge that we are going to be talking about what is occurring in Iran and in Syria now.
Perfect. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring on Miri Bar Halpern, who's a clinical psychologist and radicalization expert. Welcome, Miri.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today in this very snowy day.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much for
Right.
coming on.
Of course.
So, Mary, I want to, you specialize in trauma and extremism. From your professional lens, what are we witnessing right now in terms of radicalization, especially when it comes to Western democracies?
We're seeing everything amplified on speeds, basically. There's the identity threat, there is the algorithm application, there is, the overall stress that people are in. That by itself, when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel powerless, you're looking for easy answers. And I think what we're seeing right now is that, unfortunately, a lot of the easy answers may lead people to being more brainwashed and, in some cases, to radicalization. On top of that, I don't know if you would agree with that, but I think that most people kind of lost trust in institutions in general. So then you have this basically fertile ground for polarization. And it's very nervous system driven, in my opinion. There's dysregulation. You're looking for answers. You're looking for something for certainty. And we have a total shit show, basically.
Is that your clinical
100%.
diagnosis?
That's my clinical.
Perfect. DSM-5, look it up. You know what I mean? Clinical shit show. There you go.
It's a good way to start this interview, right?
I love it.
I know. I'm a big fan of swearing, so there you go.
I guess my question is, like, what makes this movement so much different from things in the past? What is accelerating this rate of radicalization that we are seeing? What is causing all of these groups of proxies being idolized?
So my own opinion is that I would say it's speed and scale. When we have social media platforms, they're not just spreading ideas, they're also spreading a lot of disinformation and misinformation. And then I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm a teenager and I click on something that has more gore in it or has some anti-Semitic content. Now my feed is going to see more and more of the same thing, and I'll be very gradually starting to get my ideas changed based on that. And there's the whole concept of the self-fulfilling prophecy and the in-group out-group rationale. So I'm looking at my feed and all of a sudden everybody's thinking like me, so I must be right. So I think a lot of it is what we're seeing on social media. Everything is big. There is this moral inflation, there is existential crisis for people. And I think when you have all of that together, in this day and age, especially with AI, it's hard to know what's right and what's wrong.
Yes. Totally. And I'm really glad that you also brought up too the fact that young people are being desensitized to very gory content very early on. What type of long-term effect do you think that has for societies?
This is such a good question, especially now. We just had this conversation in the organization I work for, in Parents for Peace, because we see an increase in 764 and violence for violence. And I don't know about you, but my feed, for example, after Charlie's Kirk assassination, I didn't even need to press something. It all of a sudden, like, I saw it live, or the murder that happened in the subway for right? Like, I didn't search for this stuff, but it was brought to me. So now you have teenagers that don't have the ability to just say, no, I'm going to deal. I don't want to see that. I'm going to block this content. I think two things can happen. One is that we're becoming numb, right? So we're becoming numb to gore. We're becoming numb to people's pain. The boundaries kind of shift around it. We're becoming a society that tolerates more of the violence because it looks like almost like a movie. It doesn't happen to me. It's happened somewhere over there. But I think it can also lead to more trauma for people. I think that, when you think about radicalization, a lot of people who have been traumatized have also been radicalized. Not always, not everyone who's been traumatized has been radicalized. And a lot of radicalized people have trauma in their background. And it makes me wonder about the effect of secondary trauma just from watching this type of stuff. Like, that is that by itself a trauma indicator? I mean, there's no data about it, but I'm hoping that some people are gathering data. it's kind of, it's just this vulnerability to all this stuff online without anyone to be able to explain to people this is wrong and we need to put some boundaries on this content.
So this is kind of a twofold question. We do have a question from our audience asking, it seems young males are more susceptible to radicalization. Does that have stock? Yes or no? And second of all, I'm a parent and I'm an educator. What are some things I can look out for in order to kind of figure out what are some red flags to look out for that maybe I could let other parents and educators know?
Yes, and oh my God, you're with the Massachusetts Teacher Association issue, so we can talk about radicalization all day just by talking about MTA, right? Whew. From one Massachusetts person, this has been tough over here. So okay, for the first question, in terms of numbers, I don't have the exact number, but I can definitely look for it. I will say that among teenagers, there is more vulnerabilities to people that have some mental health disorders. So we have a lot of people that are thinking in black and white, autism spectrum, trauma, like I mentioned before. Impulsivity in general can lead to that, and anxiety. But again, it doesn't mean that people that have those disorders will become radicalized. It just means that those groups will target them more. That's more vulnerability they're looking for. In terms of signs, and especially, I mean, teenagers are the most vulnerable group. First of all, because they're teenagers, like their brain is not fully developed. Granted, there are 20-year-olds that their brain is not fully developed as well, but that's fine. But with teenagers, their task in adolescence is to figure out their identity, right? And not only to figure out identity, where does it separate? Where do I separate myself from my grown-ups, from the parents, right? What are the boundaries I can push to figure out authority? Now, when you have all of that and you have someone that doesn't have a good sense of meaning and belonging and identity, now those are the ones that are going to be more in danger for radicalization, because we're looking for those meanings, right? So the way I look at radicalization, it's a spectrum. It doesn't happen right away. It's not like oh snap, it's done. It can happen to your next door neighbor, and this is actually what we're seeing quite often. Parents for Peace, the phone calls we're getting, yes, some of them are from the FBI and law enforcement, but a lot of them are parents that are worried about their loved ones or neighbors or siblings, and it can really be that person down the street from you that has been radicalized. So some of the signs, and especially for a teacher to look for, I will look at it also as a spectrum. So the first one is kind of like the not significant one, that you don't need to fully worry, but that can have your spidey sense on. So those are the teens who will argue frequently on topics that are more political or religious. Now, a lot of people are just passionate about it, which is fine. But when they start adopting more visible signs of identity and expression, when they're shifting their behavior, like they start wearing different clothes, or they're not willing to engage in conversation about other type of religion or ideologies, then you know that there maybe there's something there. Then there's the troubling stage, when you see more black and white thinking. There's the polarization aspect, and they reject, this is a key one, they reject rules of institution. They're isolating more. They'll be in the room. Maybe they start avoiding going to school or skip school. They're breaking out from their social group or their regular group, because now they're going to start looking for other friends. They're not talking with their parents if they used to talk with their parents. They follow other students that maybe they didn't follow before. They're starting to be in the out group more. Then we have it's a spectrum. And then we have two more stages. There is the worrisome stage, and then the alarming stage. So the worrisome stage is when you start seeing the behavior shifting, really. So they're cutting off, like they're pushing away people that they care about or used to care about. So best friends and parents and sibling, they start deceiving them as well. They start lying to them. They maybe openly actually display signs or symbols that are associated with a certain ideology. They starting to intellectually legitimize the violence. I give you explanation. And we see that, right? Like with the war with Gaza. or with
Yeah,
Hamas.
yeah. I was gonna say, it's like, I remember when I was a kid, in the 90s, I was a teenager, like a million years ago. And so it's always a difficult time and you're trying to find out who you are. But it
Yes.
just seems like, to me at least, there's a different level of identity confusion now with these kids. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll give you the alarming stage so people will know, and then I'll answer that if that's okay, because
Sure.
that's the part that I'm.
Absolutely.
So the alarming stage is when you actually see it's not only they're engaging online, they're also engaging outside of online, and there is maybe a financial aspect to that. They're planning attacks. They're having some means for the attack as well. So the financial aspect is part of it, and then there is the physical aspect. So that's when they know, okay, they're going to do something. So we want to intervene, to your question, Jen, way before that. So this is the prevention piece. To the question about what we're seeing in terms of, again, I see it as more of like this whole social justice new narrative that's coming. And hey, I was a social and hopefully still a social justice warrior. This is different. This is almost like an excuse, in my opinion, to use social justice. Because if you're only showing social justice toward one group of people and you make it in a hierarchy of pain, then you're not really doing social justice, right? I mean, think about what's happening right now. All those pro-Hamas protesters, why are you talking about Iran? Why are you silent, right?
Yep.
If it really was about social justice, I would expect them to say something about it. But it's like, shh.
It's a very good point.
So my question is, and I was talking with Shane about this earlier, and I would love to know if you've been seeing a shift. Some people have now been realizing that when they used to say Hamas are resistance fighters, Hamas are freedom fighters, now that they're realizing that the people that are funding Hamas, the IRGC, are doing unspeakable brutality against their own people. Have you seen a shift in people going, like a light bulb going off, like, wow, maybe the people that I was fighting for in Hamas are not the people that I thought, and that I was possibly deceived by what is going on because the IRGC is the group that is funding them? I'm just very curious to see on that take.
I wish. Have you seen it?
I've actually seen a woman who apologized. She goes, I have seen that, I stood for free Palestine. And when I see what's going on in Iran and no one is speaking up, I realized it was really more towards hate towards Jews and Zionism.
Amazing. I wish it's more. That gives me hope, Jen. That gives me hope. What I'm seeing is cognitive dissonance. So the idea of cognitive dissonance is when there is something that is against your belief system, especially if it's a core belief system, it makes you feel uncomfortable. So you need to push it away. You need to justify and you push it away. Maybe it's not there. I'm blind. I don't see it. And I feel like those are the ones that are silent online right now and used to be very active about Hamas. That they're silent because it's really uncomfortable to admit that I was wrong, maybe.
Yes, it's an ego injury. That's one of the things I've been kind of saying as well, too, is most people are, even if they do feel it, they're going to be hesitant to actually post it or say it online because, number one, it could result in ego injury. Number two, it could also result in your in-group possibly rejecting you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when you spend the last 2 years in a group that is promoting a very one-sided narrative, it's going to be really hard to walk away. It's almost like a cult, right? If I go against like the cult members, then now they're going to push me out as well. And I think what we're seeing with, at least in relation to the anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism that is related to the war in Gaza, it feels like a cult.
Yeah. 100%. And it feels almost like the oppressor oppressed, good versus evil. It seems almost psychologically seductive.
Yes, and that starts in K-12, right? I mean, this whole oppressor narrative, this is one of my biggest fears, that this is how they educate our kids, right? There is good, there is bad, and there's no nuance, there's no gray, it's a very rigid way of looking at the world. Back to my previous comment about why they're targeting people, for example, people that are on the spectrum, they already are vulnerable to think in a black and white kind of way. So then when you give them that narrative, I'll tell you who to blame. It's the Jews. It's so easy. It's so easy.
I guess my question is a follow-up then, like, why, a lot of people ask, why the Jews? Why is it always the Jews that have become such a a symbolic target politically, socially? Why? That seems to be a very common question that has been asked a lot on social media. Why? And then that kind of leads into, well, if they're always being blamed, well, maybe there's a reason why. And then that falls into that indoctrination. But what could we say to people as a clear response?
You know, Jen, this is such a hard question for me as a Jewish person to answer. I can tell you what one of my friends and colleagues who is Muslim said. She said that it's due to jealousy.
Mm.
As a Muslim woman, she said that. But I honestly don't know. I don't know. I think their society in general needs a scapegoat. And it's easy to use the same one, right? I mean, you know what's interesting? So when I spoke at Massachusetts State House against the MTA and talked about what we're seeing in the K to 12, the following session they interviewed Max Page, the president of the MTA, and they showed the things that are put online for their teachers, which is horrible, right? And he wasn't even able to say or to name it as anti-Semitism. It's like, oh, I don't know, really don't know that the Star of David folded in a dollar sign is anti-Semitic. Arno, who works with me at Parents for Peace, so he's a former neo-Nazi. He's been out of the movement for years. Yeah, so and I can tell about Parents for Peace. It's fascinating. But
please do. I would love to learn more about that. But yeah.
Arno went on the radio and said what the MTA is posting for their teacher is word to word what I used to say as a neo-Nazi in the 90s. I used to call the Israeli government Zionist bullies. I used to connect them to the US government. Every single thing there, I used to say in the 90s a neo-Nazi. So yes, it's anti-Semitism.
So it's very interesting because I know that I've done a lot of research into the MENA district or area of the world, specifically as it relates to anti-Semitism. According to the ADL's top 100, they last year at least, the MENA scored a 76% anti-Semitism rate, which is the highest in the entire global world. The global world scores about a 40%. So I think that there is definitely something culturally happening, like you said, and it has always been my belief that this sort of, Isaac Ishmael, almost like competitiveness between brothers, we're seeing that culturally play out between Jews and Muslims. What are your thoughts?
I think that being Jewish is not the opposite of being Muslim, and they should not be on the same rubric. It's not a two sides of the same coin. Right. So when I asked a while ago where I used to work, can you bring training about anti-Semitism? The answer was yeah. And we should bring training about Islamophobia. Like, you should bring training about every minority group that is suffering. But the fact that society keeps putting it together, I think adds to the problem. This is not us versus them.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's not us versus them for 100%.
And I think that's the messaging that's getting lost, is the fact that when we do talk about radical Islam, we're not talking about regular, Muslims. As an educator, I have had many students from Egypt, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. We have still continued to have wonderful relationships. And again, we need to make that distinction between the radical Islamists versus those that are peaceful practicing Muslims. And I think that's getting lost in the radicalization that's going on between black and white. Either you're a Muslim or you're Jewish. Yeah. Oppressor or oppressed. And as an educator, again, I guess as a follow-up question is, what do we do? What do we do? I don't know. What can I do as a parent, as an educator, person in society? What can we do?
I think we need to have more multi-faith kind of initiatives starting early on to bring people together instead of separating them to us versus them, right? It's not about you're the bad, you're the oppressor, I'm the oppressed, because then neither side is gaining anything out of it, because either I am now the bad person, I need to feel a sense of guilty and to repair the world and it's kind of like mea culpa, like it's all my fault, and then that will lead to someone feel shitty about himself, or I'm on the other side and then I'm becoming a victim. Neither of it is good. We should teach history as history, period. Things happen. Let's teach the nuances of history. in a way that help people think about critical thinking. I wish it wasn't like a phrase from the past, like, can we please teach K to 12 critical thinking, because when they get to college it's way too late. All of that is important. Seeing the different narrative is important, and helping them understand there are going to be a lot of different aspects to a story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I give talks now, I do talks all over United States and Canada. When I speak with non-Jewish, because I do a lot of like higher education stuff, I actually, because of my last name, people assume a lot of stuff about me if they're not boycotting me, which is also, I think. I start by saying, listen, I am pro-Palestinian, I am pro-Israeli, I'm just not pro-Hamas. But I feel like I need to say that because people just forget that I'm also a trauma expert. I'm a human being. Of course I care, right? But this is, I think, where society brought us.
Totally. So I live in California, which is a very, lefty blue, place to live. And one of the challenges I've had as a Zionist Jew, in my community, at least, literally, I've been excluded because I'm a proud Jew, because I believe in our people's, rights to, live in our historic homelands. And I would also like to educate people that doesn't exclude anybody else, by the way. Israel has 2 million Arabs that live there of many different faiths, Muslim, Christian, everything. How do we get to a point where we can start to have conversations with our neighbors again? Because I know for me, when I've tried to invite my neighbors to have conversations, they haven't wanted to.
That's painful. Especially because you're showing vulnerability and willing to engage in difficult conversation. And I'm a huge believer that only when we're uncomfortable and vulnerable, we can grow. So if there's, okay, let me think about it. If there's different groups, and I will say that I feel like as a Jewish person in the last 2 years, I feel like my resources I need to figure out how to use them effectively, right? So with that being said, I will also figure out who to engage in conversation with and who I should not engage in conversation with. So if you have people that already said, no, thank you, like maybe don't spend your time on your energy on them, right? But if there's someone that is willing to have a conversation, because that's a big deal, right? I would start by connecting it back to humanity, seeing people as people, not as problems. What is connecting all of us? Emotions, for example. Right? I sometimes start a conversation by asking people, when was the last time you felt fear? Your heart is beating really fast. Your hands are shaking. That pit in your stomach, that nervousness in your fingers. When was the last time you felt that? That's what it's like to be Jewish today. Connect it back to something that they can relate to. That is one tactic. And the other one is, and I heard it from someone and it works pretty well, change the words. So give them a situation. For example, when I don't know, a Jewish person was excluded from a space, but don't say it's Jewish. Said, choose any other minority. And ask them, would that make you upset? And then when they say yes, okay, because that just happened. And how does that make you feel, right? When I do sometimes talks, especially with students, I have this slide that shows different quotes. Some are from David Duke, and the other one are from the pro-Palestinians, pro-Hamas ones. And ask them which one says what, and they can't tell the difference.
That reasoning actually has been really helpful. Yesterday when I was at the table, there were two incidences which I think would how to reframe the question. So we had an educator, and again, I want to preface as I think the intent was not malice. I want to preface that. We did have someone who said, we had pins from Robert Kraft, the blue square, stand up against hate. And she had said, this pin is controversial. And I said, why is that? Could you explain? Instead of being like, well, instead of me going on the defense and going, why is it? Because I said, can you explain why? And she had mentioned, and said something to the effect, well, Israelis are killing people of color. Now, again, instead of me just going on the offense or on the defense, well, Israel, this and whatever, that's interesting that you say that. Did you know that in Israel, there's a huge Ethiopian Jewish community that was rescued and saved by Israel. And I said, did you also know that we had a huge list of books about the Black Jewish community? And I think engaging in it in that way of like them kind of explaining it more instead of us going on the defense has been a way to kind of I don't know if maybe I can say de-radicalize, but it kind of like made it open in a sense that the power was on them to explain. And I was like, okay, well, here are the resources. And I felt like a really positive exchange because when we left that conversation, I felt like we both walked away in a better understanding of each other. And I feel like that was something really powerful. So, trying to craft the response. And I think that goes into like the question that I'm asking is how do we pull people out of this extremist thinking? What are those other tips and tricks can we do?
Well, I love what you did because you lean in with curiosity, right? You put it back on the other person, like, tell me more. What makes you think that, right? In general, and let me just say, not everybody who has a strong opinion about something is necessarily radicalized, right? So two different things, because when you think about the radicalized individuals we work with in Parents for Peace, those are not necessarily the people that you're talking about right now. We're talking about people who are at the hate cycle to they're already in that third or fourth stage, right? And that requires very specific interventions. I mean, in Parents for Peace, so let me start by saying Parents for Peace is a nonprofit organization that actually started by someone that his son is still serving time in prison for a terrorist act, and by Miriam Churchill. And she, for over 2 years, interviewed convicted terrorists and their families to understand pathways of hate. So we treat radicalization as addiction.
That's
because it represents the brain mechanism. So someone calls us and we do a whole intake and they're a good fit for us. They get we give it's not therapy, but it is intervention and coaching with a licensed clinical mental health professional and a former radicalized. So, for example, I work with a former neo-Nazi and a former Islamist that have been out of that cycle for years and years and years. We have someone from Morocco, someone from Iran. And again, from the addiction world, those are their special peer interventionists, exit interventionists.
Wow.
And then we do
That's
a lot
very
of
interesting.
I know, this is fascinating.
We're the only organization that is doing this type of work right now in the United States and Canada, where we're able to capture also the family piece and do community stuff and connecting them to the community. It's a very unique place to be. So what it's like to get someone out, it got a lot of different layers. The do and not to do, don't start arguing with them about ideology. That's going to push them farther into the ideology, right? So you want to lean in with curiosity and you want to create bridges of connection. So just like, let's say addiction, right? Let's say you're addicted to cigarettes and you want to stop. I'm not going to just say, okay, give me your cigarettes, done. You're going to have the urge to keep going. I need to find you something else, like the nicotine gum, for example, something that can replace the same urge. So we're trying to connect to values and meaning and identity. What are some of the three big things that will lead someone into the extremism world? So I think we can learn a lot about radicalization, how to get someone out of the radicalization cycle into just, let's say, the normal brainwashed individuals we see around ourselves today.
Well, it sounds like if the person is calling you guys to see if they're a right fit for your organization, that they're already maybe thinking that they're not, maybe they've even begun the process of de-radicalization themselves. Is it typically the people that are the radicalized typically calling, or is it like their friends or family members that are concerned about them?
It is never the radicalized individual.
Okay.
We call it individual of concern. Usually it's not that person. It's either the law enforcement, FBI, parents, teachers. We do a lot of work in K-12 with teachers to identify warning signs, but also to explain how to get to us, what to do. We try to do kind of like a train-the-trainer model around it as well. This is a public health issue, so it needs to be treated from that lens.
Yes, 100%.
So I know we talked about don't argue with others. What are some things that well-meaning people can do if they're encountering things online? I know sometimes a lot of people just, their initial reaction is I need to say something. I need to do something because I want to show that I am in solidarity. What are some things that we could say to people who see a comment what would you suggest in terms of like not interacting, just reporting? Or
I would say pause first. Regulate your nervous system, because if you have an urge to react, it might be coming from your amygdala, like that part of the brain that it's about fight, flight, freeze. So you want to first be in your wise mind before deciding what to do next. So literally pause like the statue. Don't move a muscle and just regulate yourself first and say, am I in a good place to figure out what I want to do next? And then you can decide, does it make sense to report? Am I in a good place to now start interacting with someone back and forth? Because that's most likely what's going to happen. Or should I just block that person? Blocking is not a slur. You can block people. It's actually good for you sometimes. I've blocked many people in the last 2 years because truth, I don't want to see this material. It's not helpful for me. So
agreed. I'm the queen of blocking.
there you go.
my block list is getting longer and longer and longer, and now we should have a competition to see who has the most people blocked on their account.
Oh, I guarantee you it's me. I have over 3,600 people blocked and reported. So that's one of the things I'm famous for. Miri, one of the things you had said earlier was talking about intellectual inconsistencies, right? Talking about, when you speak to somebody, remove the label off the person to see if they can have some intellectual consistency. Let's say that this person is still not able to. What do you do then with someone that is just not able to maintain that intellectual consistency?
You mean if they're still pushing against?
Yes, because I've actually done exactly that. I've had those conversations where people vehemently believe one thing, and I'll take the label off. Make it be a Jewish experience. Typically, I'll use the Mizrahi experience because Americans don't know about that, and I've known many Mizrahi Israelis. It really feels like the anti-Semitism is almost a feature instead of a bug of these ideological movements.
That is such a good sentence, by the way. You should trademark it.
Thank you.
Okay, go do that right now.
Side note. So I'll share my own private experience. I don't know if it's going to work for everybody. I lean in with even more vulnerability. So post October 7th, I had multiple conversation with one of my former colleagues. It's like, I really want to understand. Like, great. We met every Friday for at least an hour for several months. And I remember it was when the kids were still being held hostages. It was right before November 21st, which is my son's birthday. And I was so raw. I was thinking, like, I feel so guilty for celebrating my son's birthday when there's kids his age still held in captivity. And I was already coming to this meeting with, here I am again, the minority, needing to give education about minority when we don't do it for any other group, and giving you research to read and you're not reading them. And I tried to explain all of that, and I felt it more and more hopeless that here's a person who said he wants to understand, and it's like brick. It's not getting through. And I went to my trauma. And I said, this is activating my trauma network. This makes me, as an individual, as your colleague, your friend, Miri, feel unsafe. And this is why. And I explained the concept that I researched, traumatic invalidation, which is, again, so I use the same language, my science language, with the people who gets it, as a way of getting like psychology and mental health providers like to understand. So I did not coin the term traumatic invalidation. It's a known phenomenon in the trauma world that was coined by Dr. Marsha Linehan and Melanie Renee. And Martin Bohas research on it, like big names, not me. I'm not a big name. And what I've been seeing and what I was able to prove with my the co-author of our article, Dr. Jackie Wolfman, is that the Jewish community meets all 9 criteria of traumatic invalidation. So think about gaslighting, but from a scientific perspective, right? So it's the emotional neglect, it's the excluding, what do we have there? We have the blaming and criticizing. There's a whole list. And I use that language because that's the language that I'm used to. And that, by the way, that's the same thing I did in the State House. I use my psychology doctor hat on to help explain this kind of phenomenon to give them the evidence. Because if they're not, and by the way, the article, the reason it took us forever to publish it, it was very important for us. It will be in a non-Jewish, in an academic peer review article, because we knew people are going to invalidate it. Just look at our last name, right? We needed that stamp of approval. And it works. People use this article now at court, in K to 12, in recommendations, because it has that stamp of approval to show that how a minority, in this situation, a Jewish minority, meets a known phenomenon from the trauma world. So I use that. I use what I would say, find your what you're passionate about and what you're knowledgeable about, and use the same language to push back.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. If you wouldn't mind, I'm going to go ahead and put the video up now. What we're about to watch, it's not gory in any sense. So anybody watching, to our viewers, you don't have to worry about that. But I am going to put a video up of female ISIS fighters that had just gotten out of prison. And they're talking about enforcing Sharia law on other women now. So I'm going to put that video up so we can all see it, get into understand it.
جزا الله الشيخ الذهبي وكل من ساعد وشارك في هذا العمل. اليوم يوم الأربعاء تاريخ 21/1/2026. أكرمنا الله بالفتح المبين والانتصار على الميليشيات الحسنة التي كانت تمنعنا من ممارسة حريتنا بارتداء ما نشاء. اليوم لأول مرة منذ أن رأينا الدنيا نشعر بتنفس الحرية. نشكر الله على نعمته، ثم نشكر الجيش السوري ونشكر حملة الذهبي للحجاب الشرعي.
Now, clearly, that is radicalization to its extreme degree when it's ISIS. What are your thoughts on people that may not be in the West experiencing their own radicalization?
It feels very different when you think about the Middle East versus the United States, for example, in terms of radicalization. I think that they're born to this reality. You know, I had a conversation with someone from Saudi Arabia a few months after October 7th, and I told him, I feel like we have very different history. Like, I feel like maybe we grew up very differently in terms of what we know about each other, and we just had a very honest conversation about it. But what he told me, their books, what they're learning is very different. So from a very young age, you're learning about hate and why it's justified, and why, again, back to what you said before about the oppressor narrative. So I don't think they were radicalized. They feel like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think it's more tricky when it's women, especially under Sharia law, because I don't think they have a choice, right? I mean, if they don't have a choice, they have to, I mean, you need to survive. And I think what's worse is that Western society doesn't help them. You know, I don't know if you know the story of Jasmine Mohammed.
Yes, I've read her book, actually. Yes. It's amazing.
Yes. It's amazing. Yes. So we interviewed her to our podcast, Susie Hass and me. And what she said really resonated with me, because she said that when she was a child and was abused, physically and sexually abused in Canada, and she was finally able to come out and say it, and was hoping that they would get her out of the house, give her help. She put herself out there. The judge said, it's just their culture. And they did nothing. They sent her back to this environment. So I think in Western society, because we're so afraid of, they're going to call us out, they're going to say that we're not culturally sensitive, we actually fail to help people who need the help.
Yes. And perpetuates the cycle of harm.
Exactly.
I have just a quick question before I know our time is coming. This is something close to me. When is it okay to cut off people from your life personally who you think have continued harm? I know this is a very sensitive topic. I know I've heard people say you shouldn't cut people entirely out of your life for something, or yes, it is okay. But you know, it's so easy to block online. I can easily just block, report, delete. But when it's somebody that you've known for years, I mean, I've talked to so many people who've been friends for 40 years, and this one topic is what is breaking each other, people's bonds apart. As a clinical psychologist, is it okay for us to protect our own psyche to just say enough is enough, I'm walking away, even though you are family? Even though I've known you for 40 years, is it okay to do that? I would love your thoughts on that.
I would guide people to do that if they keep feeling the harm, because why would you want to put yourself in a situation where you keep being re-traumatized or hurt? But I will say again, don't act impulsively. Pros and cons, what to do with it. You know, so one of the things I did after October 7th, based on this traumatic invalidation framework, I wrote a whole intervention methods to manage that. And one of the chapters in it is to process the grief of lost relationships. Because I think many of us lost relationships. Grief doesn't have to be, or loss doesn't have to be something, it can be an abstract, it can be something real, but relationships, and this is something I kept hearing again and again from people, we lost friendships. Even within family members are not talking with each other. I would say don't act impulsively, think it through and do it in a way that feels comfortable to you and your values. And be aware when enough is enough. Just like I would say to someone who is in a domestic violence relationship, right? How do you put your boundaries? How do you care for yourself? And exploring what is keeping you in a relationship that is not healthy for you. Can we save it? And if not, let's do it in a way that you can process your own grief around it.
Yep, that reminds me of what my mom always told me growing up, is that actions speak louder than words. So it doesn't matter what the sweet words may be coming out of someone's mouth. If their actions are harming you, we got to take care of ourselves first and foremost. Miri, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate that. Where can people find more about you and Parents for Peace?
Website. So we have the Parents for Peace website. There is my website, Dr. Miri Bar Halpern LLC. Social media, please follow me. This is a new thing. I'm not a social media person. I'm becoming one, hopefully. I'm learning from both of you.
Wonderful.
We would love to have
when we
another
put this
episode
out
with Parents for
yes.
Peace and have a whole discussion on that. I think that's something super important. And I would love to talk to you outside of here about PD development for educators, because this is something that we really need. Speaking up for myself as an educator, have a lot of PD on cultural competency, and we learn about the cultural spectrum and where we land on that, but I think we really need to add on to that about radicalization and anti-Semitism as well. So I'll message.
But also care for ourselves. I mean, I can't stress it enough. And I'm looking at like the names like Jen and Miri and Am Yisrael Thrive, right? There is something about the name that I love, because what I want our people to understand, it's not just about resiliency. Most of us are resilient. We can bounce back. The thriving piece, from surviving to thriving, the post-traumatic growth piece, that's where we need to be. And we do it by regulating ourselves, taking care of ourselves, and finding something meaningful, value-based, agency-based to keep going. So
you just summed it up. That's what the show is all about, baby.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure having you on, Miri. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and stay warm out there.
Yes, doing my best. Thank you both so much.
Bye.
Well, that was an amazing conversation.
That was incredible, and there's so many resources that she has, and I'm very interested to read the article that she's going to be having published in a non-Jewish article, which I think is incredible. So I'm looking forward to that. And
I'm so jealous because you're around so many cool people, I have to say. So
come to Massachusetts for a week. Come on over. I mean, not now.
Massachusetts is the place
as that goes over.
Yes, exactly. But I also want to hold space for a moment of silence too. There's a lot of conflict happening in the world right now, whether it's in Kurdistan with the YPG female fighters, if people don't know about that. In Iran, it's estimated close to 100,000 people have been extrajudicially executed just in the streets. And so we wanted to have just a moment of silence to honor all of these souls that are now not with us. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to put up the Misha Barak, and Jen is going to go ahead and say the prayer for healing. I'm going to go ahead and light a candle. If you want to say it along with us, we absolutely encourage you to do so.
And I'm going to please preface again, my Hebrew is not at all proficient, so please give me grace. And again, I just want to say, may all of their memories be a blessing, and most importantly, a revolution. So mi shabria avotenu mechor habracha la ivaltenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say amen. Mi shabria imotenu mechor habracha avotenu. Tenu, bless those in need of healing with refuah shelama, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit. And let us say, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for leading that, Jen. Oh, that's been one of the things that's been really bothering me this past week is just hearing from our Persian friends. I know we both are, very much involved in the Persian community, and just hearing so much pain from our brothers and sisters around the world has been really challenging for me.
It's very hard. And as of right now, my mother's ex-husband, and she's been in contact with him. He has family in Tehran, and still, as of now, we have not heard any updates. It's total blackout, and we don't know anything. Bijan is hoping that because they're elderly, that they are safe. But with this regime and the things that I've seen, I don't think anything can save anybody. So please pray for everyone that is still dealing with this. And I'm hoping help is on the way. And we are thinking of everybody that is fighting for freedom in Iran right now, and in the Kurds in Syria and Kurdistan. We are with you. Please don't ever think that you are alone, because you're not.
Absolutely.
We hear you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Am Yisrael Thrive, where thriving is our resistance. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Go out there and thrive, all right?
That's the best payback, is thriving and living your life. And that's what
it's my favorite revenge. Are you kidding me?
Yes. We'll see you all next week.
All right, guys, have a great rest of your week. And we are done. All right.